In this tutorial, we are simply going to be focusing on a basic problem that has to do with analyzing thiol concentration to sample t-test. Let's assume we are given this kind of problem which says the data below give the concentration of thiol in millimolar in the blood lysate of the blood of two groups of volunteers, the first group being normal and the second group suffering from the rheumatoid arthritis. And the question here is there any evidence to say that the mean concentration of thiol differs between the two groups, that is for the rheumatoid and the normal? Okay, how can we solve this problem? Notice that from the definition we are given, there is what we see, which is mm, which we call it the millimolar. It represents the concentration of substances in a solution with 1 millimolar is equivalent to 1000 of 1 mole per liter. Next thing we see from the problem is blood lysate. When we said blood lysate, it refers to a sample obtained by breaking down a lysine red blood cells, releasing their content into the solution. And the last thing which we are given is rheumatoid arthritis. The word rheumatoid arthritis is simply a chronic autoimmune disorder that literally affects the joint. Okay, back into the business. How can we solve this problem? So first I need you to understand, in order to determine if there is evidence to say that the mean concentration of the thiol differs between these two groups, we can perform the hypothesis. Let's define the group 1 to be normal, group 2 to be abnormal, those people affected with the rheumatoid. In this case, let's say mu1 as the population mean concentration of the thiol of the normal group. And here we're going to have the mu2, that is for the rheumatoid group. Right? We will use the t-test to compare this, but that is mu1 and mu2. So, but first of all, let's consider the null hypothesis. When we talk about the null hypothesis, we're simply going to be, next thing we need to consider is the alternative hypothesis. Because when we have null hypothesis, the next thing that will come to your mind is the alternative hypothesis. In this case, let's say our null hypothesis is simply going to be mu1, which is going to be equals to mu2. And the alternative hypothesis is going to be h1, which is going to be mu1 is not equals to mu2. The first one, what does that mean? It means that there is no difference in the mean thiol concentration between these two groups, which is this and this. And this second one, that is the alternative hypothesis, mu1 is not equals to mu2. It means that there is a difference in the mean thiol concentration between these two groups. So next thing we need to do is to calculate the t-test and the p-value using the given data, then compare the p-value to the significance level. And that significance level is typically 0.05 to make the decision. So let's start with the first one. Okay, in this case, first thing we need to do is to calculate the mean of x bar 1, that is for the normal, and x bar 2, that is for the rheumatoid. And after we are done with that, is to calculate the standard deviation. This is mean. Next is standard deviation. The standard deviation, that is S1 and S2 also. So let's start with the first one. Standard deviation for the normal, let's call this to be the normal and this to be the rheumatoid. This is going to be the normal and this is going to be for the rheumatoid. Starting with the first one, which is for the normal. For us to calculate the mean, we are going to divide everything by, we are going to sum everything and divide by the total number, which is simply going to be 1.84. We are going to plus that by 1.92 plus 1.94 plus 1.92 plus 1.85 plus 1.91 plus that by 2.07. Total number, feel free to count it, it's simply going to be 7. Divided by 7, or mean, if you plus everything and divide by 7, your answer is simply going to be 1.9157. Now that we have found the mean for the normal, before we move further, I will advise you to find the standard deviation. So, but before then, what is the formula for finding the standard deviation? Formula for finding standard deviation is simply going to be the summation of 1 divided by n minus 1, a summation of I, which is equals to 1 upon n, into bracket of xi minus x bar to the power of 2. In this case, notice that this is the mean sample. If this is the mean sample, this is going to be the individual visual data point. And notice that this n is simply going to be the sample size. If this is sample size, then what are we left with? I think that's all. And this is going to be the standard deviation. So let's see how we can insert this value and solve this problem. For us to find the standard deviation of x1, which we said we are going to use this formula. So 1 divided by n minus 1, our n is simply going to be 7. N is going to be 7. So n minus 1 is simply going to be 7 minus 1, which is simply going to be 6. In this case, we are going to have the square root of 1 divided by 6 as n as into summation of I equals to 1. Insert everything here, the individual data, xi minus x bar to the power of 2, square root everything. And your final answer, I promise you, is simply going to be 0.0743. And remember to put the unit, which is millimolar, at this point. So notice that for the first one, which is for the normal, we have the mean to be 1.9157. And we have the standard deviation to be 0.0743. So let's move to the next one. The next one, which is mean for the rheumatoid arthritis. So here are going to be x bar to the power of 2, which is going to be 2.81. We're going to plus that by 4.04. We're going to plus that by 3.62. We are going to plus that by 3.27 plus 3.27 plus 3.76. Total number, feel free to count everything, is simply going to be 6. If you plus and divide, promise you that you're going to end up with 3.4533, but make sure you use good calculator. So next thing is the standard deviation, which is S2, is simply going to be the square root 17. We're going to take that formula. This time around is going to be n minus 1, which is 6 minus 1, which is simply going to be 5, into 6, a summation of I is equals to 1, into bracket of x2i minus x2 bar to the power of 2, which is simply going to be 0.6416. That is your standard deviation. At this point, remember to put the unit, which is millimolar. In this case, for the rheumatoid arthritis, let's have the data. For the rheumatoid arthritis, the mean is simply going to be 3.4533, and the standard deviation is simply going to be 0.6416. So at this point, the only thing we are left with is calculating the t-statistic. What is the formula for calculating the t-statistic? At this point, t-statistic is being denoted by t, which is going to be x bar 1 minus x bar 2 divided by the square root of s1 upon 2 divided by n1 plus s2 upon 2 divided by n2. At this point, this is the formula for calculating the t-statistic. So notice that our n1 is simply the sample size, which we know is 7. And our n2 is sample size for the rheumatoid. For the rheumatoid, it's simply going to be 6. X bar 1, which we calculated previously, I promise you if you go back, it's going to be 1.9157, and x bar 2, feel free to check, is 3.4533. What about the standard deviation of the normal people, which is going to be 0.0743? But remember, this time around is going to be in square root. We're going to square it here. So next thing we have is for the rheumatoid x2 to the power of 2, which is 0.6416, square root here, effect here also. So All we need to do is to insert everything into this equation, which I believe you are matured enough to do that. Feel free to do it. So, okay, let's try it. Let you punch the calculator yourself. So, let's say the t-statistic is simply going to be the bracket of 1.9157 u minus 3.4533. We divided by the square root, as you saw it there, of 0.0743 to the power of 2. We divided by 7. You plus everything by 0.6416. Remember to put the square root divided by 6. I promise you, if you punch everything on the calculator, your final answer must be negative 6.0862. This is a t-statistic value. So, but we are not done at this point, please. Next thing you need to do is to determine the degree of freedom. Because of time, first of all, let's look at the formula for calculating the degree of freedom. The formula for calculating the degree of freedom is simply going to be degree of freedom, let's donate df, is simply going to be s1 to the power of 2 divided by n1. That's number 1. Plus that with s2 to the power of 2 divided by n2. Please make sure you square everything. Don't forget that. It's very important. Then you divide everything by divide everything by s1 to the power of 2 divided by n1. You put everything also here, but this time around everything is different in square root. Then you divide everything by n minus 1. You plus s2 to the power of 2 divided by n2. Remember to put everything in square root divided by n2 minus 1. I promise you this time around also, if you plug in all your values, which I provide you here, okay, I've deleted them. I have provided value. Feel free to pull the video back. So you're going to end up with 10. So what will happen at this point? You only have 2 steps to conclude this problem, which is step 4 and step 5, that is finding the p-value. So in order for you to find the p-value, you will need to use a t-distribution with the calculated statistic value. Statistic, that is this, degree of freedom, with the statistic which is approximately, with the statistic of approximately negative 5.067, and the degree of freedom is approximately 10. You can use the t-distribution table to find the corresponding value. So at this point, once you have the p-value, you simply compare it to the significance level. And that significance level, let's take an example with 0.05. If the p-value is less than 0.05, you simply reject the null hypothesis and concluded that there is evidence to suggest that the mean concentration of thiol differs between the normal and the rheumatoid group. If the value is greater than 0.05, you do not have enough evidence to reject. Feel free to say no. This is it for this problem. I hope you find it helpful. In case you have any question, please feel free to drop in the comment section below. And at the same time, let me advertise some videos for you. I also have some videos on comparison of gravimetric analysis, titanium determination, notation system for writing, electronic configuration. Electron configuration itself is there. And I'm going to drop all the links down in the description below. Thank you for watching. Do me a favor by clicking the subscribe button. Thank you. See you next time.